Video games are a staple of life for young people. Right or wrong, they are a source of enjoyment, stress relief and escapism for many young people that face extreme pressure and a bleak prospect for the future. In a survey I conducted, I asked people what their favourite video games were. People said that action and adventure games were their favourite genre, with 7 votes in each category, followed by RPGs like Skyrim or Divinity Original Sin with 6 votes in the category, with platformers like Mario and Sonic, older games that still clearly have a big representation in fanbases today, that had 5 votes in the category. There is a definitive trend towards the 2 different branches of adventure and action games. Adventure games like Legend of Zelda are built on a sense of adventure and escapism. The same with RPGs. It provides stressed youths with escapism and a fun way to use their time, and normally tend to focus more on the story and the adventure, opposed to the pulse-pounding action game like Streets of Rage or Dynasty Warriors that focuses more on the battle and the fight between factions. Specific games that were mentioned range from Assassin's Creed, a violent murder-based video game, to Mario Kart, a children's game. So people like a range of video games, not just the more violent IPs and series. People said the reason they like video games range from loving the art and design on them, to the action and the ability to take out their rage on them. Some people love the high pulse race and the gaming experience of the game. So I feel it's almost impossible to say that video games cause or facilitate desensitization to violence, because there is a range of games, and people enjoy games on the spectrum in all capacities. Do I believe video games cause violence in children? No, I do not. And neither did 55.5% of people who answered my survey. I feel the way I do because I think that a big sweeping statement like all video games desensitize children doesn't work, because it's down to the individual, and the situation that surrounds them may influence them further. Their social or their home life could just make them as desensitized to violence just as much as potentially any game could. Responses to my survey had a multitude of different responses, such as saying that people are naturally more desensitized as a modern species, and people saying that age ratings are there for a reason, and if these are broken at an earlier age, this could lead to a child becoming more desensitized. However, I also feel that there is a large responsibility on the parents. Video games affect our brains, and there is a good chance that by letting children play these games unrestricted, they could become more desensitized, or used to more graphic imagery and adult topics at a much younger age, such as sex, drugs and violence. These are all things that are tackled by video games that just aren't given, and are just let into the city streets.
The president talked about gun violence today with members of the video game industry, which generated a record $37 billion last year. Is there a link between virtual violence and the real thing? Here's Anna Warner.
And we turn to our series on the national conversation surrounding guns, violence, and mental health in the wake of the Connecticut shootings. Public officials and other critics have raised concerns about the role of media and culture, particularly violent video games.
About maybe what they're seeing and how they're seeing it, and also video games. I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence on video games is really shaping young people's thoughts. And then you go the further step, and that's the movies. You see these movies, they're so violent, and yet a kid is able to see the movie if sex isn't involved.
What I feel is a more pressing concern is the use of video games as a scapegoat for mass shootings in places like America. After the shooting of Sandy Hook Elementary School, people blame the shooter for being mentally ill and playing video games, instead of, going out and buying a gun. Even though studies by officials from the American Science Officers have the complete opposite opinion, and saying only 40% of all the mass shooters in America played video games or even watched footage of video games in the 2 weeks before the shooting. But Trump and the NRA seem determined to scapegoat something, and video games seem to be everyone's favourite bashing target. This is possibly because they don't understand it, but I feel it is a good political tool, as a lot of the older generations don't seem to really understand what video games have to stand for. I also let the people in my survey have a parting shot at how they felt about the issue of video game violence. One person said, "Children are easily influenced by many things they see and play on a game, which is a problem. But I believe that kids who are about 7 onwards shouldn't really play things like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, because it'll impact them and change their behaviour. It all depends on the age they are and the game they play, because they'd see a crime and not much of the punishment." Whilst another said, "Although children can be influenced, I believe that most children can differentiate between what's okay and what's not okay if they've been correctly parented. This, I think, brings the big issue of age ratings. Age ratings are a real problem in that they are not followed, and this is causing so many of the issues and contentions due to these changing parent-child dynamics with the input of video games.
I'm Andy Robertson, family video game expert, and with so many choices for families, both in terms of hardware and software, it's no surprise that video games is a hot topic. Now, some research that Game recently published suggested that 50% of families still feel on the back foot when it comes to choosing video games. So those PEGI age ratings on the front of the box, for a parent, is that a useful thing?
I think it's highly important, yes, because they're there for a reason. They're there to protect the child. If I'm worried about it, I always talk to a member of staff and I always back up with the children and explain to them why they're there for them, and I think they're an asset to them.
So I believe that video games can affect people's psyche. However, it's down to the individual and how they are affected by these video games, as well as the type of games that are played. For instance, if your child is playing age-rated games like Mario and not unage-rated or games below their age rating and not games above their age rating like Grand Theft Auto, they won't be seeing these graphic subjects. But I believe that games are being used as a scapegoat for people like politicians and bad parents who refuse to take the responsibilities for their own actions and their failings in both society and the home life. My name has been Harry Maguire, and thank you for watching my video on video game violence.